Stream status is good. Okay. Waiting for the clock. There's the clock. Live. Waiting for the screen. There's the screen. All right. And email has just gone out saying that Tabletop Minions is live now. I just got it on my phone. Good morning, folks. If it is morning where you are, if it is afternoon or evening, have a good one of those as well. There we go. Good morning from Winnipeg, California. Winnipeg, Canada. There we go. All right. Looks like I got everything rolling properly. Hope everyone's doing well today. It's dark and rainy here in my neck of the woods. It's been lovely weather this entire week. 60s, 70s Fahrenheit, which is unseasonably kind of a bit warm for mid to late October. And sunny and the whole deal. And then today it's decided to rain. So, got to have rain eventually, I suppose. Let's see here. Hello from hot Georgia, Belgium, Norway, Australia, Maryland. Good night from Kobe, Japan. Listening while painting my miniatures for Myth the board game. I've got a copy of that down in the basement. I don't think I have anything painted for it, though. Hello from Scotland, Germany, Stockholm, Denmark, Sunderland, UK. Let me see. Yorkshire. Virginia, Kent, Poland. Got someone else from Kent. I think that potentially Millennium Wargames and Jason Sharp, you guys should get together and hang out since you're in the same place. New England. Traffic Hazard asks, it just turned AM here. Does that count as morning? Technically, yes, it does. Shanghai. Hello, Hernan. We got VJ Morph in Sydney. We got Ben Abbott in Nova. Let's see here. Sweden, Toronto, more Sweden, South Wales, Southern California, Chicago. Justin Davies says hello from Wet Plymouth, the original one. Sure. What else have we got? Let's see here. Somerset, Shanghai, China. We already saw you. Let's see here. We've got Ames, Iowa. I've been to Ames, Iowa. I believe so. St. Louis. Hello from Northern Ireland, Uncle Adam. How's everybody doing? France, Southampton, right next door in Madison, Wisconsin. Did you go to RockCon in Illinois this past weekend? I did not. I thought RockCon was always in November. There was another convention that was this weekend that I was going to go to called Dragonfall. And it's a predominantly miniatures-oriented convention. It's in St. Charles, which is somewhere outside of Chicago. And I was planning on going with Matt from Wreckage and some other guys, but I ended up not being able to go. I had to help my mom with stuff, so kind of did some of that stuff. So, yeah. Let's see here. What else have we got? Southampton, Milwaukee. That's also kind of nearby. Houston, Texas, Brazil. Welcome. Lone Wolf 2K1 says Dragonfall, very small con, but was fun. Yeah, I like small conventions. I'm running my own small convention now. Some of you potentially were there. Tabletop Minions Expo. It's coming up again in 2018. It's June 9th and 10th, I believe, off the top of my head, but it's coming up. I was actually at another small convention yesterday after I got done with stuff that was here in town, which was a tabletop convention, not just Wargaming convention. So there was actually almost no Wargaming going on there. There was a lot of board gaming and stuff like that. Some RPGs as well. So, yeah. So I stopped by to talk to some friends and hang out. And it's at the same facility where I do the Tabletop Minions Expo, but they also use the upstairs as well, so not just the basement. And, yeah, it's fun. I didn't play any board games because I'm just not super into board games. I was mainly there more to hang out a little bit, and then we went to dinner and then hung out after the thing was done, because I think that convention only goes till like 10. Like some conventions, like Gen Con has portions of it that run 24 hours. You want to play, Are You a Werewolf at 4 in the morning? You totally can. But most conventions usually run until 10 or midnight or whatever, and then, they kind of shut down. So King Carrot asks, what you going to talk about today? Well, that's a good question. I didn't have a great subject. I had basically a bunch of small subjects, so I kind of thought I would just sort of, in between questions and stuff like that, I figured I would probably just talk about a few things here and there. I wanted to talk a little bit about Valhalla, since I didn't get to do it while I was at Valhalla. A quick explanation of what I think was going on there at Valhalla, technology-wise. When we all got there on Saturday, first thing I did was hooked up to the Wi-Fi and pulled out my phone and ran a speed test. And when I did that, I found that the internet was 100 megabits down and 150 megabits up, which was astounding. And that's when Miranda, Wargamer Girl, said that she believed that they had recently gotten fiber up into that area of the canyon or whatever. And so that's awesome. That's going to be perfect for my live show. However, once roughly 50 different people showed up and were at the thing, and many of them hooked up to the Wi-Fi, I think what happened is the router was like, wow, there's a lot of connections to this. And then it just throttled everybody's connection down to 2 megabits up, 2 megabits down, which was why when I sat down on Sunday morning to do the live show, I only had 2 megabits up. I mean, even though people were asleep, it still knew that there was plenty of tablets and phones and all these different things connected to the Wi-Fi. And I think it was just parceling out. But when I was there and was like the first person on, it gave me full access to all of the bandwidth. So that was a problem. So I'm going to know that going into next year if I end up going back to Valhalla. So I'm either going to need to figure out a different situation or just try to reschedule, because I think doing the live show, sadly, from Valhalla just not going to work. But yeah, that's where it's got. DJ Todd P. Harris says the cello finally got its fez. Yeah, yesterday when I did a live show yesterday for the supporters, the patrons through Patreon. I do one of those every month just for the patron people. Some of you accidentally got into it last month because I didn't click all the right boxes to make it so that it was non-broadcasting to everybody. Anyway, I was cleaning up some stuff here in the dining room and I was like, oh, I should put the fez on the cello. So definitely. Let's see here. VJ Morph says, nothing like a good overnight session of AD&D or Vampire the Masquerade. There's a lot of that stuff that goes on at Gen Con. Some of them are not necessarily scheduled, but like the Are You a Vampire game that they run up and down this one hallway, that's running all it's scheduled actually. You have to there's still somebody there at 3 o'clock in the morning who'll take your $3 and give you a badge or whatever, that kind of stuff. And then there's the BattleTech pods, the video game kind of simulator things. Those have a tendency to run also 24 hours a day during Gen Con. So yeah. But yeah, that's kind of where that's at. So anyway, the thumbnail, if you look at the thumbnail for today's video, that's a picture from a big apocalypse game that was happening at Valhalla. It was amazing terrain at Valhalla, really good. There was this guy named Chris who brought the lion's share of it, from what I understand, and it's amazing stuff, mostly scratch built, really, really well done, well painted, everything. So it's really fun to play on that stuff at the convention. I really, or at the retreat as it is referred to. I really, really liked it. Here's a question from Travis. How do I stop being such a perfectionist? I've been painting Warhammer for 5+ years, but have never finished a full box due to taking so long because I feel I need to be perfect. I did a video about that a number of years back called The Pursuit of Perfection, and so you might want to take a look at that because I talk a lot about that. I've been finding myself lately seemingly pushing through that finally, because I used to be a lot like that. I used to have a lot of situations where I would be worried about kind of perfection. I have to cough. I apologize. Anyway, so that kind of thing is tough. But the trick is that if you're painting for gaming, nothing needs to be perfect. But painted models are always better than unpainted models in general. Even if they're not the perfect thing, they're still better. And you can start to learn as you push through it, and as you do more and as you paint longer, you start to find places where you can cut corners where no one will notice. I mean, you might, and if that's what you want to do and you want to take 2 years to paint a box of 10 Space Marines, well, okay, you can. But if it causes you stress to do it that way and for it to take so long, then it kind of behooves you to try to figure out how to make it go faster. And I don't mean moving your brush faster. I don't mean spending more time painting, although spending as much time painting as you can, I think is cool. I like it. It's a little cat parade there. What I'm talking about is saying I don't need to do the 15th wash on this to get the perfect, blend. I could do it in 3, or I could do, that kind of stuff. And most people will not notice the difference. And if it's for gaming as well, like if you're going to be doing stuff for, if you're trying to paint up something to win awards, well, that's a different story. Then you do spend hours and hours and hours on something. But if it's for gaming, honestly, tabletop is good, good enough, easily. So VJ Morph says, I missed the Fez yesterday. Yeah, it was there. Oh, yeah. Sam Hinchy asks, where are the Fezes from? It's a company called Fezorama, strangely enough. I've bought 3 now, and I've purchased them at different Gen Cons. They always have a booth. Well, they recently have had a booth at Gen Con the last several years. I actually talked with them. I talked with the owner on the last day of Gen Con this year about whether they do custom Fezes and whether they do things like that. And I've got ideas in my head. I'm scheming and may make a limited run of... like a pre-order type limited run of potentially Tabletop Minions Fezes, and work with them to get them made and then shipped and the whole deal. So more cat parade. And so yeah, we'll see how that goes. It's like I said, it's a thing I'm thinking about. The trick is that at them as a company, they're very creative. So if a company just went to them and said, we just want to put our logo on the front of the Fezes because we think it would be cool, they would say, thanks, but no. So I've got to kind of come up with a design and work with them on a design that's something that's going to be creative and not just like this logo right there. This logo on that Fez. They wouldn't do that. So we've got to... There's something going on. A chase scene in a movie. Anyway, so yeah, that's what it would be. Carl Bergstrom, hey Carl, says, Uncle Adam, how can one assist with TMX 2017? Well, you can't, because it was in June. But with 2018, there's potentially ways that could be done. One way, honestly, would be to run an event of some sort. The Tabletop Minions Expo is different from pretty much every other... I'm trying to make it different from every other type of miniatures convention like Adepticon and Dragonfall, which is going on this weekend and stuff like that, where it is... I don't want it to be a tournament or a collection of tournaments. I want it to be predominantly expo. That's why it's called expo. So expositions. I want people to sit down. I want demos. I want people who bring in, homebrew stuff. People who are like, hey, I made this game. Like there was a guy there this year named Scott who had this amazing Star Wars Lego game, and he had built all these AT-ATs, and he had like little Lego trees, and it was like a jungle attack sort of thing, or it was Hoth, or I don't remember exactly what it was. I think he did Hoth when I saw him at Fire and Ice in February, and I said, hey, would you be interested in coming to my convention? And then he did, and I think then it was a jungle theme when he was at my convention. So I think the rain makes the cats crazy, or at least the 2 girls. So anyway, yeah, running an event would be helpful. There are potentially maybe other ways as well, but it's pretty small. I mean, last year we only had about 65 people total, so there's not a lot of administration. My wife helps out, and was kind of sits at the front table and sells badges and things like that. And so, but yeah, I'll let you know if there's some sort of ways we can kind of do that. Let's see. What else have we got? Girls. Melanie says, Uncle Adam, thank you for your Don't Listen to Paint Job Bullies video. For someone who has a bit of the disability, I appreciate it. Yeah, a person had reached out to me and told me the story, and it made me pretty unhappy. Made me pretty mad. And that's kind of what prompted the video, because I some of the things that were in the video were the things that I kind of had replied to them with and said, listen, this is what you have to understand. Like, this person was bad who said this stuff. This is not normal. People shouldn't come up to you and just tell you that, oh, your paint job's terrible, or that's not a standard thing. That's not a thing you can do. So yeah, definitely. Jez Hunt says a Pachow Fez. Yeah, that's not a half bad idea, honestly. The Royal Order of Pachow, something like that. I could see that, definitely. Paul says, big UK hello, Adam. My 10-year-old has now gotten into 40K and learning to paint. Any tips on how to balance his enthusiasm for more and new with a bit of patience and care, painting each model and cost? Ooh, I don't have kids, and kids I think are they're aliens. Maybe, I'm not sure. I've not ever really had any. I don't really know much about kids, is my preface. That being said, a 10-year-old with patience seems like not necessarily a thing. You know what I mean? So, taking all that into consideration, I guess I would probably say I've got a friend who basically buys boxes of, I think, Pokemon card boosters, but he doesn't give the entire box to his son all at once, because then that he kind of sort of trickles it out. So maybe like, hey, we're going to work on this one Space Marine, this week or whatever, World War II guy or alien or, fantasy elves or whatever. And then we'll work on the next one next week or in 2 weeks or something like that. So you're sort of not, I think if you rip off the Band-Aid and say, look, here's a whole box of troopers of whatever kind, then that can be kind of overwhelming. But maybe working one at a time may be something that could help. But I am not, like I said, the best source for how to handle children in any way. I, can sort of handle cats, but as you've heard, I can't handle all of them. So let's see what else we've got. I'm looking at 200 models. I paint my color schemes for each group, then I build in playlists, then I finish what I play, says Mindamorph. I think it's related to potentially something else. I find that, so right now I'm in a situation where I have a bunch of projects that are sort of all in progress. I need to get a lot of terrain finished, and I have a lot of it half finished, but I need to get a lot of terrain finished for the upcoming battle reports. And then I also have now a 1,500 point list of Space Marines, predominantly Primaris Marines from the new Dark Imperium box. They are built, and they need some embellishment, some other kind of modeling embellishment, and then I need to texture the bases, and then I need to start painting. I have to admit, I kind of miss... I'm not playing a lot of skirmish anymore these days. I mean, I still play Wreck Age, Moderator Matt's game, but that's about the only skirmish game I'm playing right now. I'm not really playing Malifaux anymore. I don't really know anybody around much that plays it. I've got one friend, he and his wife are considering playing it, but they haven't started. So, yeah, I do miss being able to just paint 5 to 8 guys or people or whatever, or monsters, and then be done with it, and then be able to start playing. Even though this, excuse me, even though this 1,500 point list of Space Marines, because they're Primaris and because I've got a vehicle in there and all that kind of stuff, and just because of the way 8th edition is now, I think there's been some points inflation. Like, most people don't play 1,500 points. Most people now play 2,000 points, and it's roughly about the size that the 1,750 lists used to be, to some degree, maybe even 1,500, depending on the army, at least what I've been noticing. My 1,500 point list is less than 30 models, 28 or 29 models. So it's not as terrible as it used to be, or it's not like fantasy where you're like, oh, I'm playing Skaven, and you're like, oh my god, I'm going to be painting for the rest of my life. So it's a benefit that way, but it's still a decent amount of models coming, to stare at and go, oh, I got to get those finished. So sitting down and saying I need to paint 200 models, that is daunting, and I don't personally want to be in that situation, but more power to you. Gosh. Let's see here. If it's a live show, it's a Sunday morning where I have something in my throat. I don't know why. I think it's just because it's early. What else have we got? Ratmaster says, Adam, have you ever heard of Mansions of Madness? Yes, I think it's a board game. And if so, any suggestions to paint up the minis? Someone wants me to commission a setup to tabletop quality. Well, I don't know how many minis there are. I can picture the plastic for some reason. But yeah, so it's not a soft plastic like Reaper Bones, luckily, because Reaper Bones are a little hard to paint sometimes. But it's not a super hard plastic like the ABS type plastic that you get in, say, Warhammer models, or weird miniature models from Malifaux. Like those are a hard plastic, super high detail. So it's a little bit softer than that, but not, like I said, as soft as, say, like Reaper Bones or, God forbid, HeroClix. So, honestly, I would probably, depending on what they look like, if it's a bunch of different types of monsters, I would maybe prime them in different colors and then just start doing some washes and some details. You don't want to get crazy fancy because it's a board game, Sam did a video on my channel years ago, one of his earliest, I think, about how to paint zombies, and how to quick paint them. So you might want to take a look at that video and see if there's some tips in there that might help you out. He kind of gets into wet blending and things like that on the bases, which you can do. It's sort of fun to do it in places like the bases of those models because they're mostly flat, so you can kind of, and it's a base. So if you're doing some wet blending there, you can get a little bit of practice doing it, and if you goof it up, real bad, which is actually kind of hard to do with wet blending, at least on a base. If you goof it up, you can just cover it up again. So it's a good practice area too for that kind of thing as well. So yeah. Korvac says, I wish more people played Shadow War Armageddon. Yeah, I do too. There was some Shadow War Armageddon that was played at Valhalla, which was cool. And I had brought, I don't want to say unintentionally, but to some degree, in my 1,500 point Chaos Space Marine army, I had brought the models that I needed to play Shadow War. I don't remember if I brought my Shadow War book, though. Maybe I did. I think I might have thrown it in my bag. So, but I never got a chance to play a game because I was doing other stuff. But yeah, there were definitely people that were playing it there. I would like it to... It's interesting. The fact that now that they're also releasing Necromunda and that they're separate games and they're doing them both in the same year is weird to me. So at least I think they're still doing it in the same year. I've still heard that Necromunda is coming out in 2017, but if it is, we're running out of 2017, so they better kind of hurry it up. Yeah. Let's see here. I know people love it when I say, let's see here, and I glance over here at the thing. Sam Hinchy says, I've gotten into building and painting skeletons lately with Halloween coming up. Oh, that's a good point. Does anyone else do their modeling just in seasonal type moods? Oh, that's a good question. There was a time, and I don't know if he still does it or not, but there was a guy locally who used to run a miniatures game, and it was like a big expo type kind of game, a big exposition or expo. Anyway, he would run it right around Halloween, and he would build like a humongous, he'd take like 2 or 3 sets of Space Hulk and put all the tiles together on a huge table. And then everybody who came to the thing was supposed to bring a certain number of points. Maybe it was 100 points or something like that of whatever 40K type models they wanted. And then he had a zillion zombies. So instead of playing Space Hulk, where it was Terminators walking around fighting against Gene Stealers, we were still walking around, but we weren't Terminators. Some of us were Eldar, some of us were Tau, some of us were whatever. And then we were fighting against these just hordes of zombies, which he had very, very quickly painted, just basically like, oh, this guy's going to be mostly green, and then slop some, wash on there and everything. But they were, it was good enough because he had seriously more than 100, maybe 150 of them. So I wouldn't want to have spent a ton of time on each one, obviously. But he would run this right around Halloween every year. And so I remember painting up some stuff to be in that so I could play. And I did, I was painting Chaos Space Marines, and so I did try to paint them up a little, like I tried to make them a little bloodier than usual, I thought, which kind of helped. It was sort of vaguely Halloween or a horror sort of thing, related, but yeah, there was that. So yeah, I don't know, it's interesting. Like all the skeletons that I've built have not been around the fall time at all. They've all mostly been in the winter when I'm in the in the basement and it sucks outside, then I'm cranking out skeletons and other larger kind of horde type things generally. So let's see here. Jesse says, I have a nice sized orc force. I'm at the point where I want a fourth 30-man mob. Any advice on getting motivated to start a large model count project? I would just tell you to break it down into parts. Don't sit down and try to paint 30 at once. I always generally break my projects down into 5s and 10s. So, like I have in my coming up Space Marine thing, I have 3 groups of 5 Primaris, whatever they're called, intercessors or whatever. And then I have a unit of 5 of those Hellblasters, which are like the plasma big dudes. And then there's there's the Inceptors, which are the sort of the big flying guys, and a bunch of other stuff. But I'm not going to try to paint. I'm not going to like go through all 15, 3 times 5 of those guys and crank them all out at once. I'm going to put them on sticks, on paint sticks like I did in that video, and I'm going to paint those 5 guys, and once they're done, then I'll go to the next 5 guys. But if I have to go through and try to paint 15 of them all at once, will it save me time to do it that way? Maybe a tiny little bit. Will it drive me a little bit crazy? Yeah, probably. My max seems to be about 12. If it's a simple model, like when I was painting skeletons, I could do 12 at a time. So I would make 3 of those sticks, and I would put 4 on each stick and crank through them, because they were like, okay, they're all primed bone color. Cool. Then I do the technique that I do in the bone color. I did a video. I keep saying I did a video, but I have done a bunch of videos. I did a video about how to paint your skeleton hordes. If you follow that, that's basically what I did to paint those guys. So yeah, it worked out. But after about 12, I couldn't have done 18. I couldn't have done 21 or whatever, that kind of thing. It just wouldn't have worked. It would have driven me nuts, even though it may have potentially helped. So yeah. Congo says Necromunda is November next month. Yeah, I think I had heard that. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out. I should reach out to Eddie maybe and see if that's a thing that he wants to send me early. That'd be nice. Yeah. Like the Shadespire thing was a lot of fun. And getting that early and being able to talk about it and paint it up and everything was also really cool. And we did play it at... I took it with me to Valhalla as well, and we played it a couple of times there. And I kind of showed off and talked about it a little bit to some of the people there who were interested, but you can't. It's basically a 2-player game unless you have 2 sets, and you can play up to 4. So I was playing against another person, and then there was other people around, so there was a lot of kind of teaching and things like that. So it was fun. Caspian asks, "Do you have any tips for painting Nurgle?" Don't sweat the details. Nurgle is messy. Nurgle is gross. So look for some sort of underspray color to prime, and then do some kind of grungy washes and be a bit messy with it. Let it pool in areas a little bit, and then go back afterwards, do a little bit of dry brush, then do maybe some more kind of different washes. I think the trick is to use multiple wash colors. That's what I've found. Don't completely coat the model in multiple wash colors. Maybe you coat the model mostly, let's say you've sprayed it like an olive drab or like a light green, and now you throw a sepia wash over everything. And then you go back and maybe use a purple wash in a couple of spots, almost like on the underside of like bellies or in the underside of the neck part, to kind of give it kind of a purpley shadow, because purple and green can kind of look nice and gross for Nurgle. And then my biggest thing is, if there's anything that looks kind of like a pustule or a zit or whatever, what I do is I take more sepia wash, and let's say this is the pustule or whatever. I just put a bunch of sepia wash on it so it kind of flows down and makes a ring around it of like a sepia tone. And I let that completely dry, and maybe I do it again, let that completely dry. And then I use like an off-white, like an ivory or a bleach bone color, and I just kind of tap the top of that pustule. So now it kind of looks like it has a white head and stuff. Yeah, if you look at... I think on the Tabletop Minions Showcase Club, Paint Showcase Club a while back, I posted my fetid bloat drone. And if you look at the backside of the fetid bloat drone, because the front is mostly armor, if you look at the backside of it, there's a lot of those little kind of pustules all over the greeny kind of skin parts and stuff. So I think that's a cool way to go. Roland Robinson says, "Do you find airbrushing to help you save time?" Absolutely. especially for painting vehicles. If you have to paint a Land Raider or what the heck is a Fire Prism, or any of those kind of bigger vehicles, yeah, I mean, trying to paint it with a brush is a pain. Not only do you get brush marks you have to constantly try to work to get rid of, you also just have, it just takes a long time. You either need a big brush, and then it kind of looks weird or whatever. So airbrush for me, I find to be a time saver that way. It's also a paint saver. If I need to paint just like one thing, like I'm just adding one HQ to this new army, or I'm just painting just one guy for fun, just because I want to paint this one model. If you have to take it outside and rattle can it, to prime it, you waste a lot of paint. Whereas when you're priming with an airbrush, it doesn't waste nearly as much paint because it's mostly focused. Like, right, you've got your model here and you're spraying, and it works out nicely. Lastly, on a day like today where it's raining out, I'm not going to prime, so it saves me time in that I could go into the basement and prime it with the airbrush and not have to wait till the next time it gets dry out before I can prime. Or the entire winter, at which point I can't go outside and rattle can. So my wife is showing an interest in painting, says Jay Freeze. Any advice on a game or army that she can make girly? I don't know about girly specifically. I will tell you that the war game that I see the most women playing when I go to like Adepticon and I see in the tournaments, that war game is Malifaux. So Malifaux is very character driven, and because of that, women have a tendency to like it a bit more, because it's not just like, oh, I'm painting soldier number 12. I'm painting this particular, named character or whatever like that. And so I do see, when I look at the big tournaments that are going on at Adepticon, you don't see many women in the 40K tournaments. You don't see, well, you do actually see a decent amount of women in the Age of Sigmar tournaments, but there are not that many female characters in Age of Sigmar. There's some more, and you're starting to see that. But in Malifaux, there's a lot of female characters, and so that's, I think, a draw. That, like I said, when I look at the tournament kind of breakdown, it's 30 to 40% women in the Malifaux tournaments. So I think that's a good. I think that's a good place to take a look at for a first start. Soldier Butterman says, "Are the Death Guard Nurgle?" Yes, that is what they are. What else have we got? Frankie Lee Bailey says, "I've been doing a lot of multi-layer paint schemes lately to get my metallic salamanders. 1 mini in an hour by hand, or 10 minis in an hour or so by airbrush." Yeah, it definitely does help to save. It helps to, not only does it help to save time and save paint, it also allows you to really, like, you can make it, if you play your cards right, you can make it look like you're a way better painter than you are to some degree. If you go and look at the Tabletop Minions channel page on YouTube, up at the top there's a banner that has some images of some models and stuff like that, and it says, new Wargaming videos every single Friday or whatever. Over on the left side, there is a picture of some of my Chaos Warriors, and it's like their cloaks. It's like they've got their backs to the camera. Those cloaks look like I did really great kind of like maybe wet blending fade from like light green down to dark green, and then I've dry brushed at the bottom some of the dust on the bottoms of their cloaks, and all that kind of stuff. What I actually did was I primed them black, and then I used an airbrush to spray them with white primer, kind of not straight down, sort of at a 45-degree angle. If this is the model, that's backwards. All right, so over here, there. If this is the model, then I sprayed the model kind of like at a 45-degree angle like this, right? With white. And so I kind of, it takes a little bit of practice, but not very much. And I basically sprayed a gradient so that their cloaks went from white at the top down to black. Then I just threw a green wash over the top of it. So now it looks like I blended light green down to dark green, and all I did was spray them black, spray them white, blurp, blurp, blurp with wash, and I was done. So, yeah, airbrush can really help make your paint jobs look better than they maybe ought to, because you don't have that much great brush control. Like me, I'm still not a good wet blender. I'm messing with it a little bit more. I find that big flat areas for me are good places to play with it. I painted a bunch of skeletons, and they were the Tomb King's version of the skeletons, but they don't look the Tomb King's normal skeleton warriors don't look too Egyptian, especially if you don't paint them like blue and gold like they used to always on the box. But they have these big kind of crazy tower shields. So I did some wet blending on the tower shields basically because I wanted to practice some more. And that worked out really quite well. I don't find myself able to do it like I couldn't have done it necessarily on the bones of the arm because I'm just not that skilled yet. But yeah, basically, long story short, I think if you're interested and you want to get into airbrushing, it's definitely good, and there's really not much in the way of bad that has to do with airbrushing. You have to clean it, but it's not that hard. Yeah, that's kind of where that's at. Brian Marshall says the women make up a third of our Malifaux community. Yeah, it's interesting, but that's what I've seen, and so that's really cool. I really like the fact that that's what the kind of thing that I see. Like I see some Infinity players I know that are women, and I see some, like I said, Age of Sigmar ones that do amazing work. Gosh, there's a woman named Andrea, I think Andrea, that I follow on Twitter. I think it's Andrea S, and I don't actually know her last name, but she does some really crazy good paint work in Age of Sigmar, just really, really good. And there's other people there as well. And I've seen tournaments both locally and also at Adepticon where you see women in the tournaments for Age of Sigmar, but when you're looking at the Malifaux tournament, yeah, it's easily a third, if not a bit more. So, Travis Dryden says, "Can you recommend any tutorial videos on airbrushing in an apartment?" That's a good question. In an apartment, I want to say that. If you look at the Wargamer Consortium channel, so Wargamers Consortium is kind of an ad hoc network of wargaming YouTube channels run by a guy named Chung, and several of us are members of it, and we just, so like at the end of all my videos, there's that Wargamers Consortium thing that comes up. Anyway, he's also a very, very good airbrusher. And so I think he's got some stuff about that, and I know is in an apartment, or at least he was at the time when he made those videos. So you might want to go back. They're kind of older, but if you go back through that channel, you'll probably find some videos about that kind of thing. So let's see. Dave says, Adam, did you see the Joan of Arc Kickstarter campaign and how it blew up? They're implementing siege battles now. Looks really cool, though I'm not a big fan of 15mm minis. I think they had a booth at Gen Con, and I walked by and I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But again, yeah, I'm not a 15mm guy either, so I'm not super interested in it. I know that Beasts of War has been doing videos about Joan of Arc, and so that's cool. But I hadn't seen anything about siege battles or anything like that with it, so that's really kind of interesting. It's something you don't see a lot of, really, in our wargaming right now, at least not these days. Maybe you saw more siege battles when wargaming was a lot more historical, like when it first started in the 60s and 70s, but a lot of times in the 60s and 70s it was a lot of like Napoleonics and things like that were like the big thing. At least that's the way what I've seen in old pictures. I was not completely born yet. No, I was not born at all in the 60s. But, siege battles, that's kind of interesting. I do have a sort of a siege weapon in my... it's not finished yet, but I have one of those Plague Claw catapults where the Skaven fling, poop or something like that with a giant catapult, and it makes everybody sick. So that's kind of like a siege weapon, but you don't see a lot of that kind of stuff. Like, you don't see battering rams and things like that too much in, like, Age of Sigmar or most any other fantasy games these days that I've seen. Most fantasy games, when you're looking at battles, like, look at the new Song of Ice and Fire, battle game that's coming from Cool Mini. That's basically just, rank and flank, and it's forces fighting each other out in a field. You don't see a lot of siege stuff, I think, because then you need to build the castle and make sure the castle's built right and all that kind of junk, and have that kind of terrain to be able to do it. So, yeah, it's interesting. Dino says, cheers from Germany, Adam. Hello, Dino. Let's see here. What else have we got? Justin Hamrick says, why didn't they make the Realm of Battle Moonbase Classius 4x6? The game board is 5 foot 6 inches by 3 foot 4 inches. Not sure how this may change gameplay options. Yeah, a friend of mine who is a game store owner bought that kit for the store and then looked at the front and realized it is not a 4x6 board. it is as you said, 5.5 foot by 3 1/3 foot board. I'm not sure of that. I honestly think the reason they did it is because it fit better in the box, and they would have had to have made a bigger box to try to fit an actual 4x6 board in there. Yeah, I don't know. That's very strange. I thought it's strange that they're constantly like, oh, you should use, play on a 4x6, play on a 4x6, and they're like, we're going to sell you something, not a 4x6. So that was sort of funny. Yeah, I don't know. I think, like I said, we honestly sat down and looked at it and we're like, I think it's because they would have had to have gotten a completely different box made to fit a bigger thing like that, and they couldn't have figured out how necessarily, or it was going to cost too much, so they were just like, well, it's close enough. It's almost 4x6. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's, if you had a board you were set up and it was, not quite 4x6, is it really going to change the game a ton? If you're getting really heavy into, like, you have to be this far away from the edges and stuff like that, maybe if you get super competitive about the way charges work and all that kind of jazz. But now with random charges and things, I don't even know if it's that big of a deal. But, I mean, it wouldn't bother me because, again, I'm not a competitive player. I just want to have fun. But I can see a lot of people going, what the heck? Why didn't you make these boards 4x6? So, yeah. Wade Wilson says, I was wondering, how do you set up your lighting for painting? I paint in a basement and have no access to natural light. I use daylight balanced bulbs. I have like an overhead sort of light thing that's relatively close. Now I have to... Excuse me. So I have an overhead light, and it is a daylight balanced compact fluorescent bulb. So it's... The temperature on it is, and I don't mean the actual hot temperature, but the color temperature is at least 5,600 Kelvin, which means daylight. But it might be higher. It might be 6,500. Anyway, what I tell you to do is buy some daylight balanced bulbs. You can get them at pretty much any hardware store or even places like Walmart or Target or whatever. You just have to look on the package and have it. If it says daylight, you're going to be a lot closer to what you want. Normal, like incandescent bulbs, which are getting harder and harder to find, or normal like soft light bulbs that you would have in your home, have a very warm color to them. Whereas other lights, if you look at a light that is daylight balanced, it will look almost a little bluish to some degree, especially like at night. Whereas during the daytime, it just will look like daylight. So if you use that as your main thing, it's better for picking colors and for making sure. Because if you use a weird light source to paint your stuff, your paint jobs may have a specific cast to them because your eyes will get used to it. Photography very strongly sees the difference between daylight and non-daylight bulbs or light sources, but your eyes sort of, like right now, like I'm looking at my hand here, right? There's a daylight bulb here. I'm looking at my hand here, and it looks normal to me, but I look pretty pink right here on the screen, and so it's your eye fixes light look more than your camera does. But because of that, as you're painting, if you're painting under really orangish yellow light, you'll just kind of skew things that direction, and then you'll take it out inside in the daylight and be like, well, heck, that looks weird. So yeah, something to be aware of. Color temperature. If you just do some research about color temperature on like Google, you'll find out a lot more than I can probably tell you. Let's see, what else have we got? Bless you. Thank you. I just sneeze. Yeah, I don't know. I took my allergy pill this morning, so we'll see how that goes. Hey, Gaddis Gaming. How you doing? Are the new GW Start Collecting kits better than the previous ones? I don't know, honestly. I have noticed that there's new packaging. Like it used to be that the Age of Sigmar ones and the 40K ones, when you looked at them, they looked the same. The packaging looked the same. And now the new packaging, in my mind, like the 40K ones kind of are like dark in the middle with a dark background with the models on it, and then it's light on top and bottom, whereas it's like the opposite way for the Age of Sigmar ones. The Age of Sigmar ones are light in the middle with the models, and then they're darker on the top and bottom of the boxes. I don't know if that's necessarily if they've changed what's inside the boxes too much or not. I haven't really looked that closely at them, but I know they have made some changes. I see Matthew Sears is checking in from Dragonfall. I hope he's doing well. Hey, Matthew. And let's see here. It says, I'm only stopping by. Sam Lenz won big last night. Got himself $500. I saw a picture on, it was either on Matthew's Facebook or else it was on Wreckage's Facebook. And it was him and Sam together down at Dragonfall. And I wish I could have made it. But yeah, so they're down there. And it looks like Sam won big. Got himself $500. Nice. Let me see what else we got. Dino talking about LED lamps. The new bulbs, like once these compact fluorescent bulbs that I'm using that I'm painting under burn out, I've got daylight balanced LED lamps or bulbs that'll go in there instead. So those work out real well. What else we got here? Josh McCarthy says, "Hey Matthew Sears, how's Dragonfall?" And Matthew Sears responds and says, "Dragonfall is learning. It's a newer convention from what I understand, and it's kind of small, but I have got hopes for it because I don't know. I just like to go to conventions, and like this time of the year, kind of Octoberish, is a little light for conventions that are wargaming related anywhere near where I live. So yeah, but yeah." Bobby says, "My friendly local game store meets for wargaming on Tuesdays, but I'm sort of busy on Tuesday. I'm not sure how to find other wargamers that could play with when I'm free." There are a lot of different possibilities right now as far as, well, sort of. There's a lot of separated and kind of siloed different areas. Like sometimes you can have some luck with Facebook, sometimes you can have some luck with your local store and looking for another group that doesn't meet on Tuesdays if Tuesdays don't work for you. It's difficult though. As many of you know, the company that I work for in my day job, we're building an app which we're hoping to launch hopefully by the end of the year in beta, but open beta, so anybody can download it on Android or on iOS, and it's going to allow tabletop gamers of all stripes, CCG, RPG, board game, and the other one, Wargaming, us. It will allow those people to be able to see events that are out there and also post like, "Hey, I'm looking to play this, that, or the other thing," and then people can send them a message and say, "Yeah, I also like that game. When it's good for you?" "Well, I'm not good Tuesdays, but I'm good Thursdays." "Oh yeah, me too." That kind of stuff. Also a good store finder too, which is really difficult these days to try to find. Like if you want to know where all the stores near you are, you can look on Facebook, but some you might not find, and you can look on in Google, and some you might not find, and it's a whole thing. Anyway, we're getting very close. We're going into closed beta in less than a month, and yeah, it's I'm looking forward to it. So hopefully when that comes out, then this will help to solve that issue. There's a Kickstarter going on right now for another company that's doing up in Canada that's doing something kind of like our thing, but they're just really only focusing on one small portion of it. We're doing, I think, a bit more. We've had some people reach out and say, "Hey, is this you?" And I said, "No, that's not us. We're not in Canada. We're almost in Canada. Wisconsin's very close, but not quite." But yeah, and we'll be launching ours, and I don't know that we'll be doing a Kickstarter. Initially, I'm certain we won't. There's maybe a potential down the road, but I don't know if we will or not. I think it's going to be. I mean, it's going to be a free app, but there may be some benefits to doing it. But we're kicking around ideas, but the app will launch before there's any kind of Kickstarter, most likely. Matthew Sears says, "Dragonfall is in St. Charles." I remembered. I was like Saint something, and I thought it was St. Charles. So yeah. And next year it'll be in Oak Brook, which I think is a little closer to Chicago, maybe. So that's cool. Hey Adam, I also collect. Hey Adam, oh dang it, it moved. It said, "Hey Adam, I collect Warhammer and Warhammer 40k. What other game would I like?" Well, that kind of depends, I guess, on what you like. It sounds like you like fantasy and you like sci-fi. You might like kind of a mixture of the two. Like, let's say, like a steampunk was what I was looking for. So maybe War Machine might be something for you to check out especially if you've got War Machine players who live near you. That's kind of the big deal sometimes, is that if you've got no one to play with, it's harder. So if there's nobody in your area that plays game X, and you'll be like, "Oh, well, that's a bummer," then it's hard to try to become a game advocate and try to get people to start playing. But if there's a group of people playing, say, War Machine near you, and you want to try that, you could go check out their games and watch, and then start to learn, and then maybe decide to build something and go from that way. But that's kind of a mixture. War Machine specifically is a mixture between like fantasy and swords and magic and whatnot, and also like big stompy robots. So I think that might be something you might want to take a look at. Adam, what conventions are you planning on attending next? LVO, Adepticon, or other? Well, actually, both of those. I was invited to the Las Vegas Open, LVO, which is at the end of January. And I was invited by Reese and those guys from Frontline to do some seminars. So I'll be doing a couple of different seminars about YouTubery, basically. The technical stuff for one seminar and more the branding, marketing, and that kind of stuff, strategy in the other. So I'm looking forward to that. I've never been to Vegas before, so I'll be doing that late January. And then I'll also be at Adepticon, where I will also be doing seminars this year as well, and that's in March. So those are the next two bigger ones that I'll be at. I will most likely be at Fire and Ice, which is in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and that is in late February. So that'll be between LVO and Adepticon. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other ones between now and then. I think for conventions now between, in November and December, there's not much going on that I know of, and I don't have any plans to go. So, but I don't think there's anything else local that's going on. So I'll be looking forward to going to LVO and checking that out. I'm not, the airline that I've booked myself on, I'm probably not going to be happy with, but Spirit Airlines, which sounds like it should be a Halloween themed kind of airlines, but whatever. So anyway, Spirit Airlines, the downside is that you have to pay for everything. You even have to pay for your carry-on. So that's kind of a bummer. But the only benefit, the reason I went with them, is because the times to fly from Chicago to Vegas and to fly back were really, really good. Like, I can leave like at 9:30 in the morning, on Friday, and be in Las Vegas by like 10 or something because of the time change. And then I fly back Sunday evening and back in time for work. Whereas all the other airlines like Delta and all that kind of stuff, it was all like, well, we can get you there on Friday, but not till 7 o'clock at night, or you can leave on Sunday, but not until 2 o'clock in the morning. And it was just all screwy, crazy times. So I would have preferred Delta, but I would have had to basically go there a day earlier. Like, I would have had to be in there Thursday and then, paid another night for a hotel and stuff. And since I've never been there at this convention before, I thought I'll give it a try, but I need better times for leaving and getting there and all that kind of stuff. And sadly, Spirit was the only ones that I could find that fit those times. But I mean, I hear that you get to sit during the flight. You don't have to just stand and hold on to a thing like it's the subway. But I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be sketchy. So anyway, what else have we got? Joshua Deacon, who I saw last night at the convention. Good seeing you at Gamepalooza last night, Adam. I posted a topic idea for you on your Facebook feed. I did see that. Yes. I didn't really see it until I already picked a topic for today, but yeah, I appreciate it. Let's see here. What else have we got? Is War Scroll Builder the best Age of Sigmar army building system right now? It might be the easiest. I don't know how well it works on mobile. I'm a big fan of Battlescribe, but to be fair, I've mainly only been using Battlescribe for Shadow War Armageddon and 40K. Well, did I use it for Conflict 47, or did I end up using something else? I don't remember. But I have not used it for Age of Sigmar, is the long and the short of it. So, yeah, that might be something. But yeah, right now, like, it works out pretty well, and it's available for free and all that stuff, so that's really cool. Ratmaster says, speaking of Reaper, Adam, did you get on the Bones 4 Kickstarter? They had some great Chronoscope post-apocalypse terrain. I did not. I've never gotten into any of the Bones ones just because I am absolutely frightened of how many models they would send me. You know what I mean? What I generally do is I generally basically wait until that wave actually comes out in the stores, and then I kind of pick and choose the few things I want to get. I don't like, because when the first Reaper Bones thing launched, I was like, oh man, it's like 105 or 125 bucks, and I'll get 300 models. It'll be awesome. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, I don't really want. I want like literally 15 of these at best. So then my thought process is like, well, what I'll do is I'll get the 300 models, cherry pick out the 15 that I want, and then put the rest on eBay, and I'll get my money back. And then I thought, currently this Kickstarter is like at $1.3 million. I bet everybody else is going to do that as well. So therefore, it'll just flood eBay with Reaper Bones, which is still to this day the case. So yeah, I haven't got any of the Kickstarters because I'm like, I'll just wait until the models that I want from the Kickstarters actually hit stores or actually hit eBay, and then I will buy them there. So yeah, I mean, it's great that they do that and it works out well for them. But yeah, I haven't. Some of the terrain that I've seen, like I've picked up dumpsters. They did some dumpsters and some shipping containers and things like that through the Reaper Bones. Some of the previous waves, which I've really liked. I also have the big Cthulhu. He's like maybe 5-6 inches tall. I have him, but I haven't painted him yet. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous to paint him because he's so big, but there's so many parts of him that are kind of bendy. I'm just afraid that if I move them too much, the paint's going to flake off. So I've got to try to do a little bit more research on that to figure that kind of thing out. Tim says, good luck with Spirit Airlines. Did you check MKE or MDW? I don't know what MDW is. I know what MKE is. I seem to generally just go down to Chicago. So I drive down to Chicago. Like when I went to... because I hate layovers. That's really the biggest issue. I just hate layovers. So I end up driving all the way to O'Hare, and then I get a direct flight to generally almost wherever I'm going. So when I went to SLC, to Salt Lake City, for the Valhalla 2 weeks ago, I drove in the middle of the night to O'Hare and then got a straight flight from there to SLC. If I would have driven to Milwaukee, which would have only been an hour and a half drive versus a 3-hour drive, there's no direct flight. So I'd have to fly from Milwaukee to like Denver or Milwaukee to who knows where. And so it drives me nuts. Well, hey, Maggie. What's up? You want to be on the show? Or are you just randomly noisy? Okay. So yeah, that's where that's at. Justin says, anyone get Zeturdi's terrain? Looks good and cost isn't bad other than shipping, so a bulk order. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Zeturdi's. I do have some of that terrain, though. A lot of it is like kind of like injection molded foam. So it's very, very light, but it's pretty sturdy stuff. And their stuff, not all of it, but some of their stuff is pre-painted. Like I have these kind of like ruined sort of castle walls that I got from them, and I use those when I go to conventions and I run Song of Blades and Heroes. And those were pre-painted. But then I also have like a sci-fi like landing pad, also from that same company, which was not pre-painted and which I keep forgetting to prime. So their stuff is kind of neat, but it's a little hard to find. Irish Bear says, hello from State College, PA. Love everything you do. It really helped me get into the hobby again. Any ideas for how to make a board to play with? Trying to make a snow/ice baseboard. Well, thank you, and I'm glad you got into the hobby. I would tell you to look, if it's PA and that's Pennsylvania, it doesn't snow a ton there, does it? Well, so long story short, if you go to the hardware store, there's this pink foam. It's pink insulation foam sheets, and it's not like the white styrofoam that you get like when you buy like electronic stuff, and it's made of those little tiny little spheres. It's like a micro cell foam, and it's what people put on the outside of their houses. It's pink insulation foam, not like the stuff you put in your attic, which has got the Pink Panther on it, and is not that. That's a fiberglass foam. This is a styrofoam, but very fine cell. It works really great for terrain if you can find it. Sometimes it's also light blue, sometimes it's even light green, depends on I don't know what, but that's a good base for making like a smaller board. If you're going to try to make a big 4x6 board, it's maybe not as great. You can get modular with it and make 4 foot by 2 foot like strips, and then you put 3 of them together, and now you got yourself a nice 4x6 if that's what you're going for. But you can also only put 2 together and get a nice 4x4. So if you get fancy with it, you can do all kinds of stuff. I would tell you to look at, there's a channel on YouTube called The Terrain Tutor. It's a lad from the UK named Mel, and he's got a lot of videos about terrain and stuff like that, and he's pretty good. So you might want to check his channel. I've not done a lot of like actual board building. I keep meaning to. I usually actually just build terrain, and these days I put everything generally on those printed play mats, the neoprene ones, like a big mouse pad, just because they're really easy to travel with or to take places and just lay down. Like now when I go to conventions, I used to always have to take like a big green piece of felt and then have a battle on that. Well, now I've got like a nice 4x4 like wasteland map, and I could just like roll that out at a convention, throw a bunch of pieces of terrain on it, and it looks good from a distance. And people are like, "Oh, what's that?" And they come over and they check it out, and that's kind of the point. So, especially when I'm trying to teach people about wargaming, so it works out well that way. But if you want like a cool 3-dimensional kind of thing, like a board like that, I would tell you to look into Mel's channel on YouTube, and you'd find some good information that way. If you're just wanting something that's easy to travel with but looks like snow, I'd tell you to go look at Frontline Gaming. They have a lot of really nice printed neoprene mats in a lot of different designs, and they come with a carrying case and the whole deal, and they're reasonably priced, and they're printed here in America if that's where you're at. Otherwise, there's other if you're like over in Europe, I know there's a couple of companies that do it over there too, and then the shipping I bet would be easier most likely. So there you go. Ratmaster says, I refuse to fly now and only drive stay local because of the poor treatment the TSA gave my wife when her grandmother died. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I had relatively good times with the TSA this year when I went to Utah. Last year when I went to Utah, it was my first time flying commercial in probably 8 years, so I did not really know all of the rules that had been, I mean, like I had last flown in like 2008, and obviously that was post 9/11, but still rules have changed and all that stuff. So I walk into the machine where you stand there and the x-rays hit you or whatever, and I got my wallet in my pocket. I think I was wearing my watch. I think I had a M16 on me. I mean, it was not smart. I was just like, I had taken off my belt and my shoes, but evidently didn't do everything right. So then they had to kind of slide their hands kind of underneath my pants edge sort of thing, which was a little weird, to make sure I guess I wasn't hiding a bomb in my waistband. I don't know. That was weird. And then they also swabbed me for bomb residue. But that was last year. This year, I was smarter and got everything figured out and everything. And so I had no problems going through security, but my battle foam bag with all my models got flagged both directions, on the way to Utah and on the way back. And I just assumed they wanted to look at the models because they were cool. No, not because of that, but because there was some metal in there, and I thought, man, what is that weird shape? Or the tape measures that I had in there. You look at it on the X-ray, but then they show you the thing, and it's like this spool of like metal that gets concentric, at least smaller. And actually, what they wanted to look at was the books. Like she pulled the books out. So like the first book she pulls out is the Death Guard Codex, and it's got this crazy Nurgle warrior on the front, whatever. But didn't even bat an eyelid at that, and she just was flipping through it. And I don't know if you can you soak books in something to make them set on fire, or I don't know what, but they were looking at that, and on the way back, they wanted to look at the decks of cards that I had in my battle foam bag, like the tactical objectives and the open war cards and stuff, and the guy opened the boxes and rifled through them, and I was like, okay, you're fine. So I don't know what that was all about, but that was the only problems I had with TSA this year. Honestly, both flights there and back were great. I was really had Delta on the way there and America Airlines on the way back, and was quite happy with both. Watched movies on both, like on my phone, and that really helped pass the time, which I appreciated. TSA is out of control with their stuff. Not a fan. Yeah, a lot of people think that way. I agree. Mecha82 says, I get why Games Workshop renames some of the 40k and Age of Sigmar factions, but I don't like any of the names. I still don't call the Imperial Guard the Astra Militarum. I just don't do it because it's, well, frankly, I find it hard to say, so I just keep calling them the Guard. It's okay. But yeah, it's interesting. So they do that, I believe, it's from what it's been explained to me, it's something to do with copyright stuff. It's easier to copyright or trademark or whatever Astra Militarum than it is Imperial Guard to some degree. So I think that's part of what's going on there. But, again, we just, they're starting to call the Eldar the Eldari or something like that, but everybody I know still calls them the Eldar. So, it's just, they're going to keep doing it, and that's fine. We can decide to do it or not. It's cool. Something 227. Uncle Adam, I want to paint my Imperial Guard, see, and Death Corps of Krieg with German military uniform colors. Besides the black primer, what paint do you suggest? To recommend to get that effect? Well, I guess sort of a kind of a, is it like a blue gray or more of just a gray? I guess I'd prime them black and then try to find like a gray auto primer. Honestly, if you're going to use rattle can, I'd prime them black, let that dry maybe half an hour, and then go back with a like a dark gray rattle can, and then spray from above. Don't spray them the same way you did the black, just kind of spray from above, and then that way they're going to have lighter, like the gray will be on the tops of the shoulders, tops of the helmet, stuff like that, and it will sort of fade down underneath to black and then look like a natural shadow. And then you can go back and throw some washes and detail and stuff like over that. That's probably the best way I would do it. I mean, if you're looking for a very specific spray color for that second color, I would tell you to take a look at maybe Games Workshop stuff. There's some cans, like maybe like the color, the base color, whatever it's called, not Mournfang, whatever the base color is for Space Wolves, which is kind of a bluish gray. That might be something to look at. Or Army Painter. They also have a wide selection of different spray primers, colors. If you're using airbrush, world is your oyster. You've got plenty of choices. You're sick for choices, frankly, as far as colors to go with. So yeah, absolutely. Derpus Maximus says, once a guardsman, always a guardsman. Exactly. What else here? Sub-assemblies for the win. Yes, I'm a big fan of the sub-assemblies. Well, when they're like, in the video I did recently about not building your miniatures, or the dangers of building your miniatures, like that Primaris Captain in Grav armor, that guy needs to be in parts. You just, I watched a video recently where they were painting it, and I forget what video it was. It might have been one of Duncan's, but it was something. And he was, the person was painting, and they're like, oh, and then you just paint underneath, like the backside underneath part of the cape, and then you just do that real quick, and then we'll go on to the next step. And then there was like a cut, and then it was all painted. But I'm like, how the heck did you get the paint way up inside there? You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I was like, that must have been a pain in the rear. I would just rather keep the model in several pieces and do it that way. But that being said, for normal Space Marines and stuff like that, I'm still not a big fan of keeping the bolters off. There's a lot of people who love to keep the bolters off when they paint because they want to paint the big eagle on the chest and go through all that stuff. But then later on, you glue the gun into the hands, and it covers all that up anyway. So, yeah, I'm not that guy yet. Again, if I was painting for a cool display diorama or whatever, well, then I would be. I would make sure all those parts were cool because I was like trying to win something, or just at least trying to make something look really super cool. But for models I'm going to put on the board and play with, not as big of a deal. VJ Morph says he thinks that color is called the Fang. That color that I was talking about before, that sort of blue-gray that the Space Wolves use. That sounds right, I think. Scott R. says, Vallejo Model Air German Gray. Yeah, that's the thing. The Vallejo, there's two lines. Well, there's more than two lines, but the two main considerations for Vallejo colors, they have Vallejo model colors, and they have Vallejo game colors. And there's model color, game color, but there's also model air and game air. So the air line is for airbrushes, obviously. But the differences in the colors between model and game for Vallejo is that game is bright, crazy colors and purples and this and every color kind of that you would use in gaming. The model line is very military oriented. So there's like 18 different types of olive drab. And so, that kind of stuff, because it's about historical military type modeling. That was where they sort of started. The game line is designed for, I'm painting some Eldar, and you need like a sunburst yellow for their heads, or stupid pointy dumb heads, or whatever. But that's kind of where the game line is. The game line is bright, crazy colors. The model line is very military. So if you are looking for specific type colors like that, I would look first, probably, actually, really, if you want to go that direction, you might look really hard at, especially if you're using an airbrush, you could definitely look at the model line from Vallejo. It's good stuff. Alicia says, Lord of Change really needs sub-assemblies, although somehow Warhammer TV managed to paint one with it completely assembled. Yeah, they do that. I've noticed that there too, and I'm not quite sure how they're doing it. Either he's just got a lot of patience when he's doing that kind of stuff, or I don't know, maybe they're not as, I'm not sure exactly, but Yeah, I've noticed that too with some of the videos over there. It's a mystery I cannot figure out. I agree, Alicia. That's very true. Peter Pan. You could also try Vallejo Panzer Gray Primer. It's a near black gray primer, very nice for dark gray uniforms and tanks, obviously. That's a good idea as well. So you're getting lots of options over there, I think. And let's see here. What else have we got? Army Painter Uniform Gray is okay for Germans because you just got to wash it, glaze it until it's okay in your eyes. Uniform changed so much during the war that you can't get it wrong. That's, yeah, I can see that true. I mean, if you're trying to get really super historical, if you're obviously just painting your guard in colors that are kind of like it, you can do whatever the heck you want. So there's that too. Frankie Lee Bailey says, "Hey Adam, don't forget Vallejo Mecha now. The Gundam guys are getting into painting a thing too." Yeah, I've heard. I think yesterday at some point in the chat for the patrons, someone mentioned the new line from Vallejo called Vallejo Mecha. I need to do some research on that and look at it because I'm interested, just seeing what kind of colors and what kind of effects and stuff like that they're doing. So that's kind of cool. Mr. Armour says, "Totally hear you on the olive drab, Uncle Adam. We're doing a club project now, and I've been saying that we can use like 10 different colors for some guys. Yeah, there's a lot of olive drabs and field drab and Russian military drab and American or U.S. tank drab, and there's a lot of drabs. That's one of the things that's interesting about painting historicals is that, especially if you stick to very specific for World War II, I did that video about what I learned from painting Flames of War, and that is that a lot of times everything is dark green. You know what I mean? You just it makes the painting a lot quicker. That's for damn sure. What else are we talking about here? Wub says, "Adam Smasher, how do you think long distance gaming could be done, like virtual scenery on a hex board?" Well, there was a game that I enjoyed and did a couple of videos about a couple years ago called Golem Arcana, which was a war game that you played along with like an app on a tablet, and it allowed you to kind of track, like, when you're going to move this guy, it shows you, oh, here's all the hexes you could move to, or if you're going to shoot like a range weapon, it shows here's all the range, the areas you can hit and you can't, and it kept track of things, and you could even do the dice rolling and all that jazz. And that had a feature where we didn't have to be at the same table. We could play multiplayer against each other. Like your friend lives in a different city or a different state or different country, you could still play that way. So there's some of that. Sadly, that game seems to have failed to some degree, but I think it was a cool concept. And now, like, I did a video about a month ago or more about the future of wargaming and talked about augmented reality, and I think that you could start to see some of that stuff kind of creep into being able to kind of play. I don't want to say remote presence or anything super sci-fi like that, but you'd be able to play probably against somebody who is further away. You could also play two players right here, but you could kind of do it from further away as well. And so I could see some of that happening as well. There's also games. There's a game on Steam, or a program, an app, I guess, on Steam called Tabletop Simulator that a lot of people just like play games, and they have files for 40K. I don't know if they have files for, like, maybe they probably have X-Wing as well, but I don't know. But you basically are playing on a virtual tabletop, and you do it through your PC or through your evidently you can also do it on the goggles, like HTC Vive or the Oculus Rift and stuff like that. But for the most part, most people do it through just the normal desktop computer or laptop or whatever. So that's a potential possibility as well. Ratmaster says, "Wish Hobby Lobby carried Vallejo's airbrush line. There's just the regular stuff." Yeah, I know. I do wish that they carried the airbrush stuff too. They only seem to just carry the regular model colors. They don't even carry any game colors. Our Hobbytown USA here in my hometown has both lines, the model color and the game color, but they don't have any of the air colors either. So I end up having to buy them online because nobody in the area has got the air colors around here, which is a bummer. Michael Strange says, "Hello from Raleigh. Thanks for the meditation video. Spot on." Good. I'm glad. I hope that it helps some people out, or helps some people kind of look at it that way and kind of think about that stuff. So definitely. What else are we talking about here? Gonna block this guy because he is not doing what we want. There we go. All right. Anyway, I have some both metal and plastic models from 25 years ago which need to be stripped. Any advice? Well, in a perfect world, what I would do, well, a perfect world is a strange term, but generally what I do is I use something called Super Clean, which is this purple stuff that you can get at sometimes at hardware stores and places like that. It's a degreaser type agent. Comes in squirt bottle or a big gallon jug or whatever. I think on Amazon, if you want, you can buy it in a 55-gallon drum, but I would not suggest to do that. So you get that stuff. At least that's what I like to use. It's relatively non-toxic. Like, I wouldn't drink it, but it's not particularly poisonous, I think. Well, that's what it says in the bottle, at least. Not particularly poisonous. It says that right there. But that stuff, I throw that into an ultrasonic cleaner, a cheap ultrasonic cleaner I bought from a local hardware store. And then you throw the models in there, and then you hit the button, and it vibrates for like 3 minutes, and you hit it again, and you hit it again. And usually after about a half hour, maybe an hour, like I will sit it next to where I'm hobbying. Because the thing is the timer only runs for 3 minutes. So I sit it over here, and I'm painting, and I hear it click because it's finished its 3-minute cycle, and I just reach over and I push the button again, and then I go back to painting. Like I said, I run that for maybe half an hour to an hour, and then I can usually take it upstairs, go into the sink in the kitchen, and just scrub the like the paint mostly off with a toothbrush, an old toothbrush. Do not use your current toothbrush. So yeah, that kind of stuff generally works. If you've got some really stubborn paint on the metal models, you can go a little bit more hardcore with like nail polish remover type stuff, and there's a bunch of other different things. I did a video a while back about the pitfalls of stripping. You can find more information there, and if you watch the video, but if you really read the comments, there's a lot of people saying, oh, I like to use this and this and this. Do some testing, do a little bit of research. If someone's like, oh, I like to use brake fluid, okay, that's cool, but brake fluid sometimes is not cool. It's definitely not cool to resin. With plastics, some plastics it's cool, some it's not. And I've not tested it, so I'm not going to say yes, definitely use brake fluid, but there are people that do. So read some stuff online to find out from people who are like, oh yeah, I use brake fluid, but I never use it on plastic. Or I use it on brake fluid and it works fine. I keep saying Blake fluid. Jay Freeze right there is saying brake fluid for the win. So, you know, that stuff works out too. Some people like Simple Green. I generally like Super Clean, but there's a lot of different options out there for stripping. I'm actually working on starting a small series of videos that's a little bit more about that kind of thing and like kind of rehabbing models and stuff like that. So I'll have some stuff coming out soon. Hopefully that will be kind of cool and work in those situations, and then maybe that'll be more information for you. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I would definitely, you need to strip those models in something and then get the paint off. And it doesn't all have to come off. If you have a very smooth, like perfect kind of like elfin princess, then you want to get as much of the paint off as possible, because she's not going to look good if she's got like weird bumpy parts on her cloak or whatever, you know what I mean? And then that's the previous paint that just never quite came off. So you want to try to get as much off as possible. But if you're painting like a Nurgle Marine, I've got several Nurgle Marines that I found used different places that I just never even bothered to strip. I just primed right over them and painted, because if they look all bumpy and grungy, they're Nurgle. That's their job, you know? So it works out pretty well that way. Depends on what you're doing, obviously. As in most things in life, it depends. What else have we got? Stripping, I use meths, which I believe means mentholated spirits. However, in America, meths are drugs that are very bad and illegal, and that's the whole point of the television show Breaking Bad. So don't use the Breaking Bad meth, but the other kind of meth, I guess, is okay. Mentholated spirits is probably what the orc warlord there is referring to, I think. Let's see here. Thanks for the advice. I did soak them in turpentine, etc., but not acetone yet. I'll try an ultrasonic cleaner. Yeah, I'm a big fan of ultrasonic cleaners, especially since, like, you know, you can spend a ton of money probably on one, although I've never seen one that's been more than $100. The ones that I buy are about the size of an American football, maybe a little bigger, and they're designed for jewelry and small stuff, which our models are generally small. Now, if you want to, like, try to, you know, completely strip a like a Land Raider or something really huge, they're not going to generally fit in most ultrasonic cleaners. So that's a different story. But for models and stuff, unless you're trying to dump 30 of them into a bucket at once to strip them all at once, ultrasonic cleaners work pretty well. And generally, like the ones that the last one that I ended up buying, I think I got on Amazon for 25 or 30 bucks. So, I use one for my airbrush. So when I'm painting and I'm done and I want to clean it, I take the airbrush apart, I put it in the ultrasonic cleaner, and I run the button cycle a couple of times. And then I just leave the brush components in the water or in the ultrasonic cleaner until the next time that I paint. It's not going to rust because it's all stainless steel stuff, and then I just take it out, put it all back together, and then go to town. And then that way the paint, if there's any paint you missed on the internal parts of the brush, it's not going to dry and cause you lots of trouble. If you keep it in fluid all the time, you're better off. And then I have another ultrasonic cleaner that I use just for stripping. I don't want to mix the two just because I'm putting, I don't know. I don't know if super clean would be bad inside my airbrush. Maybe not, but I don't want to mess with it. So that's where that's at. Phil Johnson says cheap nail polish remover for metals, Dettol for plastic or resin, in my opinion. Dettol is an English kind of like antiseptic kind of cleaner, which is a little hard to find in America. I did finally find it on Amazon that I was able to order, and I've got it, and it's sitting on my desk at work because I got it delivered to work. And then I read an article about how absolutely smelly it is. And so I'm afraid of opening it. Like, I'm certainly not going to open it at work. That will get me kicked out of the building. So I'm going to have to open it in the garage or something because it's evidently pretty stinky. So I'm a little nervous about using it, but I do want to give it a try at some point. Wubda asks, hey Adam, where's the best place to show off my minis in the Tabletop Minions community? Are there plans for a forum? There are not plans for a forum currently. That being said, if you're on the Facebooks, there is a group on Facebook called the Tabletop Minions Paint Showcase Club. And that's a good place. That's where I'm looking for people in the community to post pictures of works in progress, finished stuff, and to ask questions like the stripping question, like, hey, I want to strip some models, what's the best stuff? That's the three things really that I'm looking for on the Paint Showcase Club. I do not want links to people's blogs. I don't want links to people's Kickstarters. I will delete that kind of stuff pretty much as I can. What I'm looking for is people to show off the stuff they're working on, the stuff they've finished, and to ask questions so that other people can help them out and answer them. Those are the three things. But it's called the Tabletop Minions Paint Showcase Club on Facebook. I don't see a lot of people using forums as much as they used to. There are some people that are still very diehard into forums. I used to use forums a lot more than I do now, but so that's why I've not really got any plans for them. The last time that I tried to run a forum was when Tabletop Minions first started, not as a YouTube channel, but as I was trying to start a local wargaming club, and that's where I came up with the name Tabletop Minions. And I started a forum. I keep saying we, but it was basically me doing everything, which was fine. But I spent most of my time deleting porn bots and junk like that off that forum because it was a free forum, and so they didn't put a ton of time into making it super secure. So it was a lot of time spent on my end having to delete that kind of stuff and everything. So I'm just not. I don't see myself running a forum specifically. I am kicking around the concept of a Discord channel. For those of you that use that, it will probably start just for patrons because, again, that will help cut down on the amount of administration I need to do. So I'm looking at getting into that. But at some point, if I start getting good at it and it doesn't cause too many troubles, I may open it up and then have a patron-only private area and then a public area. But this is all down the road, next 2018 kind of stuff. But there was a little bit of discussion talking about that yesterday during the patron chat. So, yeah, that's kind of where it's at. Peter Pan says, Dettol smells like concentrated doctor's office. Yeah, that's what I am kind of concerned for. Yeah, definitely. Alicia says it's pretty strange smelling. It does get pretty strong when you open it. Yeah, that is my concern. Aoki. I think I'm pronouncing that properly, but maybe not. In 40K, is it frowned upon to have one Space Marine chapter in one squad and another chapter in another squad in the same army? Squad to squad, kind of. If you and your friends want to do it, it's obviously you can do it. If you're trying to follow the rules, because maybe you might go to a convention or you might play against people that you're not necessarily friends with, people you've not just met at the shop, if you're trying to follow rules, then yeah, squad to squad is a little bit. Now, that being said, with the way the rules work now in 8th edition, you can certainly have two detachments, let's say. You could have like a detachment of White Scars and a detachment of Ultramarines in the same army. That's totally cool and legal and whatever. You could have a detachment. I mean, my Space Marine, my Imperial army that I'm working on is going to be a detachment of Space Marines, and they're going to be Ultramarines chapter tactics, but I'm making my own chapter because, that's the kind of dork that I am. But then I'm going to be able to attach to them a detachment of AdMech, Scutari, whatever, whatever the AdMech stands for. Mechanicum, Administrative Mechanicum, whatever. Anyway, so I'm going to be adding AdMech to that army because they'll be in separate detachments. Now, technically, you can mix as much stuff you want to within the detachment, but then there are special rules that say, well, if you want to have this special rule, the entire detachment has to be this keyword. So that's why you sometimes separate those guys into different detachments. But technically, and this comes from Age of Sigmar. My Age of Sigmar Chaos army is a whole bunch of weird junk. It's all chaos. They all have the chaos keyword, but I've got Skaven, I've got Beastmen, I've got Nurgle dudes in there, and they're all in the same army. Now, because of that, none of them, they all have the chaos keyword. I can only use a chaos allegiance. If I wanted them all to be, let's say, Skaven Clan Pestilens and get special allegiances that are just available to Clan Pestilens, well, then the entire army needs to be Clan Pestilens. And since I'm not going that direction, I don't get those special benefits. So that kind of stuff. And it's the same type of thing to some degree with 40k. But you can get away with it by making multiple detachments. So you might have like a scout detachment and a patrol detachment, or a spearhead detachment and a supreme command detachment, or battalion detachment and a patrol detachment, or whatever you want to do. And then that gives you command points and whatnot. And that's where you get a lot of information from. So, definitely. Eric Sheely says, LA's totally awesome cleaner degreaser from the Dollar Tree is the best and safest to metal plastics and safe for you too. I keep hearing about this. LA's totally awesome, and I need to. I drive past Dollar Trees frequently to and from work. I need to pull in there one of these days and pick up a bottle of that stuff because I want to test it out. I want to see if it makes me even happier than the purple stuff, super clean. If it does, then I can see myself becoming totally awesome, as it were. So yeah. Ross says, Tabletop Minions Paint Showcase page on Facebook is great. I've gotten a lot of great feedback. I suggest it to anyone not using it. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I also suggest it to anybody not using it. I think it's a great place to find all kinds of inspiration, see other people's stuff, and if you've got questions about like, hey, how do I paint a really good gold, that doesn't look weird and chunky on my models? I'm having trouble. People will give you answers and say, well, this is how I do it, and it's like I've liked how or whatever. So that kind of stuff works out really well. Adeptus Mechanicus. See, I knew it was there. Yes, thank you. Adeptus Mechanicus. I appreciate VJ Morph and John. Traffic Hazard says Adipose Mechnophiles. That's not quite the right one, but you're close. So yes, absolutely. I hear cat-related shenanigans in the background in the kitchen. I'll have to check out and see what's going on. Yesterday, Margot, one of the girl cats, stole. I was not eating potato chips. I was eating vegetable chips, which are a good deal smaller, little strange kind of ovoids, and I was eating those, and then she stole one, and I still haven't quite found it yet. So I don't know. I don't think she ate it. I think she just wanted to play with it, and it's probably under a table. So it's definitely some sort of. She might be playing with it right now, actually. Houston says, "Hey Adam, have you played Arena Rex?" I have not. I have watched for a couple of minutes, not for long periods of time, but I've watched a couple of games. They've had a presence at, I think, the last 2 Adepticons, I think. I mean, the models look, at first glance, oh, there she goes. The models at first glance look like kind of cool, but I don't know if it's for me, frankly. It's like sort of historical in some fashions, but not in others, and I don't know. Yeah, it's just, I don't think it's necessarily for me. But I know they're starting to get bigger. And I like the concept of just general sort of gladiatorial type battles in general. Like if they made some sort of gladiatorial rules, maybe for Age of Sigmar. I mean, guess you got skirmish. You can play the Age of Sigmar skirmish, but something that was designed to be played like in an arena, almost like a little quick sport, would be sort of fun. I suppose somebody could write something up, just make it Creative Commons or just let people download it or whatever, and maybe not get in trouble legally or whatever. But yeah, I think some sort of like arena game that would be very simple to play with. I don't know how simple that game is, but I haven't looked into that. But I don't know anybody around here who plays it. But like I said, I've seen it at the last couple of Adepticons, and it seems to be getting better. So, Twerch. Hello. It says, I finally made it in. Quick, what did I miss? Well, let's see here. We talked about a lot of things, as it turns out, because it's, oh gosh, we're an hour and a half in. All right. So, yeah, we talked about a bunch of stuff back and forth. One thing that we talked about a bit yesterday in the patron chat that I haven't talked about yet, that I meant to be talking about, is a lot of people asked yesterday about that new partnership between Games Workshop and WizKids. So, for those of you who haven't seen it at all, WizKids and Games Workshop announced a partnership this week, and I had a bunch of people reach out to me and say, does this mean they're going to make pre-painted Space Marines or Eldar or whatever? Because WizKids is the company that does HeroClix. I don't believe that's the case. Now, they didn't say anything about it, obviously, in the, the press release. But they did talk about what is going to be happening. So it was not like they just didn't talk about what the partnership's going to be. They talked about what the partnership's going to be, and they did not say, oh, and we're going to make pre-painted Tau or whatever. So I don't think that's coming. I really don't. But what they are going to do is they're going to pick up the slack from where Fantasy Flight Games left off. So Fantasy Flight Games and Games Workshop used to work together on board games. So Talisman, Relic, which was basically the 40K version of Talisman, the Blood Bowl team manager card game. Like, they had a whole bunch of different, Conquest and all that kind of different stuff. They had all these more board gamey licensed Games Workshop type stuff that Fantasy Flight was putting out, and then Fantasy Flight and Games Workshop broke up for whatever reason. There's lots of speculation and whatever, but I don't know the answer, so I can't say. But anyway, so they stopped working together, those two companies. So now Games Workshop is working with WizKids. So WizKids, it said, I think in the article, that WizKids is going to start with redoing Relics, which, like I said, is like the 40K version of Talisman, and they'll start producing and they also said they're going to produce some dice games. WizKids evidently has a game called Dice Masters, Dice something, and they have a bunch of licensed stuff, like, I don't know, maybe Marvel or DC superheroes or something like that. I just know they've got some dice games where you get some kind of randomy type of dice, and then it's a thing. I don't know how it works, but anyway, it looks like they're going to be making a 40K version of their dice game as well, and some other stuff as well. So pre-painted Games Workshop models, not still a thing, but it looks like the company, they're going to be starting to produce those licensed board games and things again, but now just through WizKids instead of through Fantasy Flight. So that's pretty much all that came out about that whole press release, really. There's not much else to it. They've finally decided, yeah, we're going to finally work with somebody else to make this stuff. Now, if the board game comes with lots of miniatures, like Lost Patrol or Betrayal at Calth, Horus Heresy stuff or whatever, Games Workshop is still making those types of board games internally. Necromunda will be coming out from Games Workshop and not from WizKids. So again, that's a model related game. Anything with sprues, I think, inside where you have to put the models together, Space Hulk, all that stuff, that'll still be done direct by Games Workshop. But games where it's just cards, or just a board and cards and some dice and whatever, that kind of stuff, I think they're shifting all that stuff over to WizKids, like they were doing with Fantasy Flight. So there we are. That's pretty much the that whole thing in a bit. Keith Miller says, my cats have made a few Nurgle-looking dwarfs by using them as chew toys. Very pitted. Yeah, I could see that. That works out well. Melanie Dawn says, I gotta head out. Sad lots to do before a chaotic week at work. Take care, y'all. Take care, Melanie. What else have we got? Let's see here. Torch says, yeah, it'll be card games and Dice Masters. Dice Masters, I think, is the thing. I've not played any of the Dice Masters stuff, so I don't know what that what that's all about. Peter Higgins says, I can't imagine Games Workshop handling miniature pre-paints to anyone. Yeah, same here. Like, the painting is such a big portion of the Games Workshop hobby. You know, they put out a video on YouTube like every day with Duncan telling you how to paint, so I don't think they would ever... I did a video about this recently. Is this ever going to be a thing? And I don't think it's ever going to be a thing. So, Douglas Hooker says, liked your meditation video. I not only de-stress as I paint, but occasionally it is escape, some chores to put off. If I am painting, it feels like I am being more productive than just watching TV. Absolutely. I honestly just don't watch television anymore. Like, my wife and I like to watch this one show that only has a season like every about 2 years. It's called Fargo. I think it's on FX. There have been 3 seasons of it. And we record it, and then she and I watch together. But otherwise, I just don't watch television. Well, okay. Sometimes, like, if we're eating dinner, we'll watch, like, reruns of Law & Order. But that's only as long as dinner lasts, and then I go downstairs and paint, or I come over here and edit videos, or do whatever. But I just don't watch shows anymore, you know? I'm just not finding it interesting. That's me personally. Other people are different. I do like to still watch movies from time to time and things like that, obviously. But just regular television shows, I just don't, you know. I watch YouTube on the television. Like a lot of times before going to bed, I'll watch and catch up on my stuff that's in my, you know, subscription feed. But I don't watch like regular broadcast television. I haven't watched a network television show, and I can't think how long. Probably 10 years. Just not my area of interest anymore. I would rather be sitting and painting, and I can't watch television and paint at the same time. I can't watch movies. People talk about how they just turn on Netflix and they just listen to it in the background while they paint. I can't do that because I'm a visual person, and even if it's something I don't care about, I will probably sit there and stare at it while holding my miniatures, and my brush will dry out. So that's why I listen to audio. That's why I do podcasts and audiobooks and stuff like that when I'm painting. Interesting note that I just found out on Friday, Games Workshop is now starting to work with Audible, and they're putting some of the Games Workshop Black Library stuff on Audible. For the longest time, you could only buy the audiobooks for Black Library stuff direct from Black Library, which most of them weren't audiobooks per se. They were more like audio plays, which I would rather listen to an audiobook than an audio play with sound effects and people yelling and different voices for everything. I just want to hear a guy read the book to me, well. I want it done well, but so now they've actually got some audiobooks now, and they're going to be adding more and more on Audible. So that's cool because I have an Audible. If you go through Audible, you can pay like I don't know, it's $14 a month, and then you're a member, so you can buy books cheaper. But you also get a free credit every month. So basically you get a book for like a book that would cost, if you bought it at full price, say $25 for the audiobook, you get it for basically a month's fee, which is, like I said, $14.95 or something. So, so I've been using Audible for quite a while now. I like it. So I'm trying to get them to become a sponsor for the show eventually here, because I think that they sponsor a lot of other podcasts. They might as well sponsor mine, and it's perfect for my viewers because a lot of us like to listen to stuff while we're painting. You may be listening to this right now while painting or building, and if you are, hello, how's it going? But yeah, so TV, I'm just not a big fan these days. That I guess is the point. I don't even know where that started. I apologize. I got about 20 minutes left. Sam Hinchy says, I was actually surprised that Games Workshop made different colored plastics. They've been doing it like Shadespire is in different colored plastics. Some of the kind of push fit together kits, like they made a push fit together kit of Death Guard, and they're like in kind of a green, but not like an orc green, but like a lighter kind of icky green. And then they also made some for Primaris Marines that are in the blue. And so they've been doing that more, not because they don't want you to paint it, because, like with Shadespire at least, it's a situation of, well, if you don't paint it, we still want you to play it and have it easily discernible which team is which. You know what I mean? So we understand that maybe you're not going to paint it, but at least you can have different colored pieces. So for them, it's not that big of a difference to make the colored plastic, and I think it works out well. And so it's smart. Like they're not... I think one of the things... And I hate to be talking about Games Workshop so much again, but I think one of the things that's going on with the new version of the company is they're not as stubborn as they used to be. Like my first version of... the first version that I ever played of Space Hulk all the models were the same color. So if you didn't paint them, it was, I mean, you could obviously tell the difference between a Terminator and a Gene Stealer, but just at a first glance, it wasn't as easy and quick. Now when you buy, I believe now when you buy Space Hulk, those models are in separate, in different plastics, different colored plastics. So at least you've got that going on if you're not going to sit down and paint them. And they're doing that with Shadespire, and they're starting to do it with more of the models. Just makes sense. Douglas Hooker says, The Walking Dead tempts me away from my painting occasionally, but then I end up painting more The Walking Dead miniatures afterwards. Well, that's sort of helpful. I used to watch that show years ago. Like, I think I only got through about season 4, and then I kind of just stopped. I have a very low threshold for television in general. Like, if it doesn't really hold me, I'm like, nope, I'm not going to keep watching. So there's that. Torch says, looks like they finally got some Black Library books. I love Audible. That's exactly what I was talking about. Yeah. Let's see here. What else have we got? And Mr. Armour says, hey, Audible, if you're reading this, advertise here and I'll pay you money. See, there you go. Benjamin says, hi, Adam. Finally made a live session from Australia. Appreciate what you're doing. Do you have any tips to maintain your brushes as long as they can after a painting session? Well, I appreciate that you appreciate it. I thank you for that. I'm kicking around because I'm getting a lot of people asking me that question about how to take care of your brushes. So frankly, I am sort of terrible at it, as far as I can tell. I don't treat my brushes very well, so I need to do some research about how to best do it. I know that I do have some brush soap. I just don't ever use it. Like, I mean, I've tried it out just to be like, oh yeah, look. But I haven't actually like made a routine of trying to make it actually be something that I do to my brushes. I think it's partially because I bought a whole bunch of brushes a long time ago. Like, I just went crazy and bought a bunch of brushes because I found some brushes I liked, so I just bought as many as I could, and they're not made anymore. They're the older Games Workshop brushes where they were black, the shaft or whatever it is black, and at the tip it was like a different color depending on what type of brush it was. There was like the yellow tip and the red tip and the purple tip or the blue tip and all that stuff. And so I liked those brushes. I know a lot of people didn't, but I liked them. And they weren't super crazy expensive. So every time I went to the store, I would just buy like a couple. And so I have a ton of them still that are untouched. They're, probably 4 or 5 years old, but they haven't even been used yet. So I look at a brush right now that I'm working on, and I'm like, well, I've just about beat this to death. And so eventually I will just put it aside, go grab a fresh one from the box that has never been touched and start painting with that. Now, that's not an economical way to do it. It's not necessarily the smart way to do it. But sometimes I'm neither economical nor smart. So, yeah, I do need to learn more about it though, because I have now purchased a few, like there's the new Artificer brushes that Games Workshop puts out. And I know I don't have any of those Winsor & Newton Series 7 super fancy expensive brushes anywhere, but I do have a bunch of Games and Gears brushes that I also want to start using. But the problem that I'm finding is that I don't want to start using them without knowing how to clean them properly because I don't want to screw them up. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this. And once I kind of do the research and figure out how to best properly clean these brushes, then I will do a video about it because, like I said, I've had a lot of people asking me about it. So there. All right. Jay Freeze says, Miniac just did a video on brush care. That's true. Well, I don't know if it's true. I mean, I know he did a brush care video. I haven't watched it yet because I haven't really been keeping up with YouTube since I got back. Well, I watched a bunch of YouTube right after I got back from Valhalla last Thursday night. I watched some on Friday because I took the day off, and then I watched a little bit last weekend in the evenings. But I haven't really watched much at all this week. I've been keeping an eye on the feed, and I did see that he posted a video about brush care, but I haven't got a chance to watch the brush care video, I guess is the point. So I'm going to say, yes, he did do a video. I assume it's a good video because I think he does good videos, but I can't say that it's a good video because I haven't watched it, but I'm sure it probably is. He's a smart guy. Well, that was kind of weird, but yes, he is a smart guy, and I'm sure it probably is a good video. Let me see where else we at here. The best thing that keeps your brushes nice and clean is isopropyl. You will never ever paint without once you've tried. Huh. I've never heard. I mean, I know what isopropyl alcohol is. I guess I've never heard about putting your brushes in it. Huh. I'll have to take a look at that a little bit. It doesn't like mess with the glue that holds all the bristles in. I would think it would do that, but maybe not. I'll have to do a little research on that. That sounds like something interesting that I should check out. Thank you, Paul. Let's see. Good brushes like Winsor Newton are pretty hard to get. Are pretty hard to get unusable. Well, I'd hope so. They're very expensive, so I would hope they'd be a little bit more hardy, than a normal cheap brush. Because yeah, you expect a cheap brush to fall apart, but when you spend $25 or $30 on a brush, you would hope that it would stand up to some damage. But on the other hand, you don't want to like make it have to stand up to too much damage. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's where that's at. Caleb says, I like the Army Painter brushes as they've held up well for me, and also the Windsor Series 7 brushes. I've never tried any of the Windsor Series 7, but I do have some Army Painter brushes as well, and I would like to maybe try some more. I do like the feel of the brushes of the shaft or whatever, because it's more like triangular. It's not as round, so it kind of fits your hand. At least some of them, not all of them, but some of them are nice and like chunky, the actual handle. So I feel like I'm not squeezing as hard or whatever, and that works out nicely. So. Wally the Bus asks another quick question. Apart from mini wargaming, which bat reps do you watch? I don't watch a lot because I'm not a competitive player, and I think that's part of it. Let's see. What else? I do watch some mini wargaming ones. I like the mini wargaming banter bat reps more than the regular ones. I like the ones where it's a little bit more personality and a little bit more having fun, a little bit more goofing around. I know some people don't like those. To the point where I think now they have to put like a disclaimer at the beginning of the banter bat rep saying, hey, this is going to be us kind of screwing around, having a good time. So if you're looking for very competitive, analysis of what's the best army to use, you're not going to find it here. And I appreciate that. When I do my battle reports, it's going to be that basically same thing. You're not looking for good strategy here because I don't know how to do it, but hopefully we'll have a good time. I do like to watch Andy 2D6, his battle reports, just because I find him specifically funny. His commentary is enjoyable to me in a very dry, kind of English humor sort of way. Who else? Tabletop Tactics I frequently watch, just because I like those guys are funny. You've got Lawrence, who just won some big tournament in England, actually, that was put on by Games Workshop, like some big GT grand tournament. He, I think, came in first place with his Space Marines. Because I got there was like an email that, just like a marketing email from Games Workshop, or else I was looking on the community site. I forget exactly. But I'm just scrolling through and I'm like, hey, I recognize that guy. And he had like a trophy and stuff. So yeah, I like their stuff because I think they're funny. Him and Bone and the guy named Beard, and those guys are just sort of funny. I don't necessarily watch all of them because they can get crazy long, 2-3 hours. So, yeah. But otherwise, I don't watch a lot of other bat raps that I can think of. Sometimes I watch Winter's SEO, even though he's a lot more serious and it's a lot more... But I just like to look at his terrain, frankly. I think his terrain's quite good generally. So I'm just getting ideas here and there, but I almost never watch a bat rap all the way through. I usually just kind of watch some of it, skip around a bit, watch some parts, try to catch the funny bits, and then go on to the next thing. So that's where I'm at. Mecha82 says Miranda and her husband have a lot of passion to keep Valhalla going year after year. Yeah, they do good work. Valhalla is a lot of fun, and if you're interested in it, I'm sure that the Kickstarter for it... So the way that they do it is, like, I'm an invited guest, and the guys from Mini Wargaming are an invited guest, and Owen, the Cooler, who used to be on Mini Wargaming, he Gaming with the Cooler channel, he's an invited guest and stuff like that. So there's some, maybe half a dozen, Codex Dan, invited guest. But then everybody else who's there, like, paid to be there. So, they, rather than saying, well, we'll just have a website where people can pay to show up, they make it a Kickstarter, so it gives it, like, a time limit. But it's a very limited Kickstarter. Like, there's only so many of this type of bed, and there's only so many rooms that are at this level or whatever. And so when they sell, then they sell. So if all of a sudden one year a bunch of, like, they still had a whole bunch of empty rooms or whatever at the end of the 45 days or however long they run it, they'd be like, oh, well, I guess Valhalla's not going to happen this year because people aren't interested. So it's kind of like almost like a pre-sale sort of gig. But yeah, it'll probably, I bet you for next year, I think that Kickstarter usually is in March, roughly in March time, I think. But the spring at the very least. So if you're interested, keep an eye out. I'll talk about it on this channel most likely as well. If I get invited back, I'll be like, hey, I'm going to Valhalla and here's the Kickstarter. I've done that the past 2 years. So that's a way you could end up going if you were interested. Basically what you're paying for with Valhalla is room and board, which is to say a place to sleep, and you get fed. They have a caterer who is a lovely woman, and she does amazing work. And so you get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I think it was six days this year. I think it was slightly longer than it was the previous year, which is why the prices went up a tiny bit. But you were there 3 more meals, and a full other day of gaming and shenanigans. So it was cool. But yeah. Titus Lucretius Caris says, let's see here. See, I do say that a lot. I'm trying to stop it, but I'm not particularly good at it. VJ Morph says, Luke's APS has some great tips on brushes. Luke's APS. I don't know what that is. I'm assuming it's a YouTube channel of some sort, or maybe a blog. Mecha82 says, it's difficult to me to find bat reps that I really like, since with most it's easy to see who wins by looking at the armies. Well, I mean, I can't tell generally by looking at the armies because I'm not necessarily that great. But, yeah, I could see that. Yeah, if you're very competitive, or there are people, I've got friends who I refer to as being able to see the matrix, whether it's a tabletop game, whether it's a board game, whether it's a video game. They can just see how the game works and then immediately figure out how to best do it, how to best build a character, how to best, structure their Fallout guy so he is absolutely unstoppable very early in the game, or whatever, that kind of stuff. I have never been able to see the Matrix, so there'll be times like, oh, I want to go this way because that's a cool-looking gun. Well, it's not very efficient, and it's not very good at this, and it will only work until about 5th level, and then afterwards you're going to find a problem efficiency-wise. And I'm just like, yeah, but it's a cool-looking gun. So that's kind of that's why I'm not a tournament player. One of the many reasons why. So, but if you can just look at 2 armies and go, that army's going to win, well, then yeah, maybe that's not a great bat rep, just because you'd be like, well, it's unless this army really rolls poorly and this army really rolls well, if it's only going to go one way, then that's kind of a bummer. So let's see. I forgot about other what's his name? Ash Barker, also from Guerrilla Miniatures. He also does lots of bat reps as well. 12 Neef is here saying that he does Age of Sigmar ones, and I agree. He does a bunch of different. He does all kinds of different ones. Games Workshop. Mini Wargaming only focuses on Games Workshop. Currently, they are starting to spread their wings a little bit again, but they used to do a bunch of different types of battle reports, X-Wing, War Machine, and stuff like that. But they were finding that, and they did a video about this, they were finding that people just weren't watching those, and they were really only watching like Fantasy and 40K, and then it turned over to Age of Sigmar and whatever. But so that's why they decided, well, it's best for our resources, it's a best use of our resources, best return on investment if we just do the types of bat reps that people actually watch. So that's why they switched to predominantly Games Workshop stuff. Now they're starting to kind of branch back out again a little bit, like they've been doing what the heck have they been doing? This is not a test. The post-apocalyptic game, which is kind of like Fallout. They've been doing one of that just because they were, and I talked to Josh a little bit about from Mini Wargaming at Valhalla, and he's like, yeah, we decided to do it just because Matt really wanted to do it because he thought it was cool. So, and they had a bunch of cool terrain, and they thought, well, this will be fun. And they modified it a bit, made it a little bit more campaign-like, almost a little bit of an RPG element to it, but they just wanted to do it because it was cool. And I think when you're putting out 6 videos a week like they are, you can do these little tests and go, well, let's see what happens if we do this, and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. But if you do it as a short, kind of like almost like a mini series, if it didn't work out, okay, we just won't do that part again, we'll try something else. Their baseline obviously is Games Workshop stuff, which makes sense. So, but yeah, there we go. VJ Morph says, I prefer a little shaky cam over locked off cameras. Yeah, I like I said, I've watched a bunch of different channels, just tested here and there, different battle reports to see different styles and to see what works and what doesn't for me. And I do see some where they've got like a top-down camera and like a camera over here on the dice thing and and I don't know if I like those. I like the concept of one person holding the camera, but the thing is that when I do mine eventually, which is coming up, I have a suspicion I'm going to stay on my side of the table with the camera mostly because I want the viewer to kind of watch the game through my eyes. If I switch sides of the table, the viewer is going to be kind of confused, I think, because seeing it from the other angle all of a sudden is going to be a little bit more difficult. If when you play a game, you generally stick to one side of the table. Sometimes you move to the other side of the table because you got to move behind a building or whatever. But in general, I want to stick to one side of the table because then it's more like you're playing as if you're me against this other person. Another big thing I'm doing too is, and I've already purchased the microphones, I'm going to put a lapel mic, a wireless lapel mic, on each person, because the thing that drives me nuts about watching bat reps sometimes is that the guy who's holding the camera and shooting stuff, you can hear him really super well, and you can't hear the opponent at all. So I want to put wireless lapel mics on both persons so that when either of them talks, you can hear them equally. So just little junk like that. I'm thinking way more about it than I probably ought. Esoteric Order of Gamers does great bat reps. It's just two friends having fun. I've seen their stuff. Yeah. Like New Zealand, I think. Yeah. I think I'm actually maybe subscribed, I think so, yeah. Like a guy with a shaved head and then his friend, and they live in somewhere in New Zealand. Talk a lot about board games as well, not just miniatures games, but they also talk about board games, which is cool. But yeah, I get you that. Ted Morey says, so Uncle Adam, how much do you customize your miniatures, such as sculpting or swapping parts around? I like to do that. That's one of the reasons I stopped playing Tau, was because I didn't see there being a lot of conversion. They weren't apparent to me at the time when I was first starting. I was like, I'm really interested in conversions, but like a Tau with like skulls all over them or whatever would look weird, sort of. So I had a tendency. So that's why I moved over to Chaos Space Marines, because I wanted to do stuff and do more conversions and be able to do all kinds of like head swaps and tweaks and all kinds of things like that. And it seemed like it was going to be easier to do with Chaos Space Marines than it was with Tau, which is why I sold my Tau. I could have also gone, obviously, into Orcs. Orcs are rife with conversion or possibilities, but I instead stuck with Chaos Space Marines. So yeah, that's kind of where that's at. I don't know. I do a little bit of green stuffing here and there, but I don't think I'm good at it particularly yet, so I don't do too much of it, sadly. I should probably practice more or do some research and stuff, but like with Nurgle stuff, I do a little bit here and there with it. So yeah. Douglas Hooker says, if I won the lottery, I would not buy cars and yachts. I would go for experiences like Valhalla, the Beasts of War boot camps, and experiences with people. Last year on my Christmas list, I had Night Out. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's why you're seeing a bunch of the channels that are getting bigger and more successful. You see them doing events, I mean, like going to... traveling to Mini Wargaming to be in a bat rep is like an event. People come from all over. I just watched... I don't know, a couple of weeks ago or a month ago, there was a kid that came from Poland, I think, and he was there doing a bat rep. So he flew from Poland to Canada so that he could. He probably looked at Canada stuff too. He probably went to Niagara Falls, which is nearby, and a bunch of other junk, and made it a vacation. He probably didn't just come there, go to Welland, play, and then fly back to Poland, but maybe he did. But yeah, so that's kind of a cool thing. Beasts of War does their boot camps, so they have these weekends where there's specific games, like maybe it's Conflict 47, and you pay, and then you get like a starter box, and then people sit around and build and hang out and chat one day, and then they play some games and stuff, and at night they go to the pub and you have to stay in a hotel nearby. They don't have like a facility like on the site where you could stay, but that's where everybody gets together and everything, and that's cool. I'm doing it to a much lesser degree with the Tabletop Minions Expo, we had the Noob Painter came up from Texas. Michael and his wife came from Wyoming. Other people came from closer nearby, but there were people driving up from, like Mac was driving up from, Josh Mac was coming up from Illinois. There was a bunch of people. I mean, again, it was small. This is first year, it was about 65 people, but we had a lot of fun. So those type of events are I think, to my mind, are the kind of evolution for the next thing that YouTube channels are kind of doing in our little tiny sub-niche of wargaming. Just to get people involved. It's just good for the community, and it's fun, and like not everybody's going to travel from super far away. Though, like I said, there was a guy at Valhalla this year named Max who flew from Australia, which is a good stretch of the legs if you're going to be making that trip. But yeah, so there's a lot of options. I met Andy 2D6 2 years in a row, I think. Or maybe not 2 years in a row, but at least 2 years. There have been times I've met him at Adepticon because he's made the trip over to Adepticon. I'm hoping to make the trip someday over to. I'd like to go over to the UK. I've never been. I'd like to go over and say hi to the guys from Mini Wargaming. Or sorry, well, I would like to do that too, but that's Canada, not the UK. I'd like to go over to Northern Ireland up there. My wife would also like to go just because she was in England in college for a 3-week thing with some sort of college class, and so she'd like to go back. I don't know. I'm looking forward to, like I said, going to the Las Vegas Open at the end of January. I've never been to Vegas. I don't see myself gambling or going to shows. I guess the place that the Las Vegas Open is right across from the Bellagio with the big fountains. So I'll probably stand over there, look at the fountains for about 5 minutes, and then go back to the gaming. But still, it'll be Vegas, so it'll be that. Landfill. Are you coming to Adepticon this year? I am. I am definitely going to be there. As I was saying earlier, I'm doing 2 seminars at Adepticon this year about YouTubery, and I'm just going to be hanging out and having a good time, looking at cool models, and hopefully maybe be able to play some games. I thought I brought my Age of Sigmar army last year to Adepticon, and as it turned out, I left like a third of it home. I brought the case that I usually bring my Age of Sigmar stuff in, and then I opened it when I got there because I was going to play a game, but then it didn't work out. I was going to play a game with Mitch, MC1 Gamer. He and I were going to get together to play a 1,000-point game, of Age of Sigmar, and then I couldn't make it because I had another event and all that kind of stuff. And then I did the happen to look in my box and go, well, maybe we can play tomorrow or whatever. And then I looked and I'm like, I don't have my Vanguard in here. I don't have, Vanguard at the time were 360 points. So 360 points of a 1,000-point list missing is rough business. So I'd taken some of the stuff out to shoot pictures and I just forgotten to put it back in, and I just grabbed the bag on the way to Adepticon and said, oh, well, here's my stuff. So I'm going to try to actually get into some games this year. I played demos and stuff like that, but I want to bring my models and actually play, not in a tournament, but just with some people. So we'll see how it works out. I can't pronounce this. Massage? I'm screwing that all up. I apologize. Yeah, people from Poland are mental. How could he do that? And then there's one of those with the smiley faces with the tongue sticking out. I don't think people from Poland are mental. I was just astounded that someone traveled all the way from the other side of the planet to some degree, all the way to Canada to go and be in a bat rep on a YouTube channel. I think that's really cool. It's a long trip. Like I am probably maybe longer. It's 9 to 11 hours for me to drive to Mini Wargaming. I've done the Google searching on Google Maps, and it would take me about that long to drive there if I wanted to just get in the car and drive there. And I'm looking at that going, that's a lot of time. I don't think, and obviously it took probably a lot longer to get from Poland. So it's really cool to me when people make those big trips to go to places because of their passion for the hobby. Oh, goodness. Speaking of passion for the hobby, it's past 11 a.m. So I apologize. I need to get going. I've got to do some more stuff, and we've got lunch and all that jazz. So I hope that everybody has a good day. I hope you keep painting, and I hope that if you get the chance to go to a convention, whether it's a smaller local convention, I hope you get to do that and maybe try it out and see what you like. Or if you get to go to one of the bigger ones, Nova Open, Las Vegas Open, Adepticon, if you do that, then hopefully I'll get to see you there. I always like to talk to people. So anyway, that's pretty much the show for this week. I hope you had a good time, and I'll keep making the videos, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks here on the Every Other Sunday show.